Hello traders and investors, and also hello to dividend harvesters. You saw this week Datatec came out with its trading statement or a set of results, and in those results they also declared a 12 Rand 50 special dividend. So in this video we'll talk about the Datatec special dividend, and then later on in the video we will talk about some of the things that you need to think about when you go for dividend harvesting. But first, what is Datatec? So Datatec is an international ICT company. It is a South African company, but it operates globally. So you can see from its website that the company has a revenue of about 4.6 billion with earnings before tax, depreciation and amortization of about 154 million US dollars. So it's a company that generates a lot of money. 4.6 billion US dollars is a lot of money, and also the earnings before tax and other deductions, it's about 154 million US dollars. But we want to talk about that special dividend, where the special dividend came from. You can see here in their brief description, they say that among other things, they are also into management consulting. So we see this analysis Mason, which is part of their management consulting business. But when you look at share data, we can see that when they declared the special dividend of 12 Rand 50, the other option is script distribution, not script lending. We'll talk about what does this script distribution means. So we can see that they said they do now speak about that they sold this company, Analysis Mason, and therefore the special dividend is coming from the disposal of that asset. So Datatec sold its entire 71.2% shareholding in Allison Mason, which is held by 100% subsidiary of Datatec. So we are talking about Datatec Limited, but there is the subsidiaries Datatec PLC. Usually when you see a PLC, these are companies that are operating in the United Kingdom, because in South Africa, when you speak about companies, it's either we have a private company, which is a PTY Ltd, or we have a publicly listed company, which is just limited. The private is not there. We don't say a public. Basically, the limitation is the limited liability of the company. Same thing with the PLC. It's also a public limited liability company. So based from that asset disposal, they sold that business for about 128 million pound in cash, and then about 7.1 million in principal in terms of deferred loans. So as a result, the board of Datatec Limited, they then decided to return the cash back to shareholders. So they're returning about 135.1 million pounds. That means that for each shareholder, they can expect to receive a special dividend of about 12 Rand 50 rands. So the price, it's in 12 Rand 50 rands, even though they reported it in cents. If you divide this by 100, you get 12 Rand 50. This is the gross dividend, and then that special dividend is going to be paid on Friday, which is the 2nd of December 2022. We are still in October, so there's still going to be a whole month before the investors receive that amount from Datatec. Okay, then there are some things that they talk about. So the shareholders will have a choice to either receive the cash offer of 12 Rand 50, which is gross. Somewhere they do talk about the net dividend after tax. So the net dividend is about 10 Rand per share that the shareholders can expect to receive. But the other option is that shareholders will have an option to either decide that they receive this cash offer of 10 Rand per share after tax, or they can receive Datatec shares in addition or in return for that dividend, meaning that you elect not to get the cash component of the dividend, but you want to get more shares. So if you are someone that reinvest the dividend payment in the company that paid that dividend, then you can just elect to receive that script lending. The advantage of going to script lending is that you won't be paying dividend withholding tax. As you can see that the new Datatec ordinary shares, for those people that will participate in script distributions, those are not subject to dividend withholding tax. What they are going to do, they are going to have a volume, a weight average price, meaning that they will decide on the price of the new shares. Then they divide by the sum that we are supposed to get from that 12.50 divided by the VWAP, which is the volume weighted average price. Then that will determine the number of shares that you are going to get. So it means that if you elect not to receive a dividend, you are going to get shares. The advantage of that is that you are not going to pay the dividend withholding tax. So I've already said a lot. In summary, Datatec disposed one of its companies and they are returning that cash back to shareholders. Shareholders were going to receive about 12.50 gross dividend, but after dividend withholding tax, they are going to receive 10 rand per share. The alternative is that the shareholders can elect to receive shares instead of receiving the cash. So let's talk about the dates, because that's the important thing there. So we can see that the company is still going to do a lot of things. They've already made the announcement here in October about that dividend. Then the other things where they're going to determine that VWAP. So they're going to determine the VWAP on 21 November 2022. But the date that we are all interested in is the last day to trade in order to receive the special dividend. So that last date to trade is 29 November. So if you want to pay share, if you want to receive either the cash dividend or the scrip distribution, you need to be a shareholder by 29 November. Then on the 30th, then the shares will be trading ex-dividend. Okay, then that dividend payment, either in a form of shares or in a form of cash, is going, the record date or the last day to elect whether you want to receive cash or shares is the 2nd of December, and then the record date is also the 2nd of December. Then on Monday, the 5th of December, that is when the cash or the shares are going to be received by the shareholders. So in short, the dividend is going to be paid on Monday, 5 December, whether it's a cash dividend or it's a share dividend. So those are the dates that you have to keep in mind. If you want to participate, you need to be a shareholder by 29 November. Then from 30 November, the shares are trading ex-dividend. Then on Friday, on Monday, the 5th of November, that is when the dividend is going to be paid. Okay, now that we've covered the first aspect of this dividend distribution, let's talk about dividend investing. Whenever you want to invest in a company, and especially if you are interested in getting that dividend, there are a couple of things that you need to think about. How is the company going to perform, especially on the ex-dividend date, even before going into that dividend? Like we said, that the dividend is going to be paid in December, so we still have November to go through. A lot of things can happen with the company. The share price can continue to go up and down. But if you're an investor, then you're not necessarily investing on the basis of the share price. You're also investing on the value of the business. What is the value of the business? So now, as you're watching this video, the share price of Datatec is currently about 41 rand 40 cent. So if you want to buy these shares now, so that you become a shareholder before that ex-dividend date, the question that you should ask yourself is 41 rand 40 cent the fair price of these shares? That is something that you have to think about. If then you reach a conclusion that it is a fair price and maybe there's a margin of safety, then you can consider investing in Datatec shares. But if you believe that 41 rand 40 cent is overpriced, then you wouldn't want to pay a premium for any company, because, well, it's better to buy a company that is selling at a discount and it has a potential for growth. But the question of whether a company is overvalued and undervalued shouldn't be the only thing that you think about when you want to invest in a company, because today you can pay a premium, meaning you can buy an overpriced company, but if you see that that company has a potential to grow in future, you're still buying it at a discount because you are discounting the future earnings of that particular company. The point that I'm trying to make is that there are so many things that you can use in order to reach a conclusion on whether to buy a company or not buy a company. It shouldn't just be based on that the company is going to be paying a dividend, because I understand that the dividend payment, for some people it is a cash flow, because that is cash that they receive. But there are some things that you need to think about. So it is the same thing with Datatec. You should understand whether 41 rand per share is the fair price. Is the company has the potential to generate more money in future, so that when you pay 41 rand, you don't end up with regrets. We saw with SAP Zenzele Kabili, the share price of SAP Zenzele Kabili was supposed to come at 40 rand per share, but we saw the share price going all the way to about 180 rand per share. There are people that bought SAP Zenzele Kabili at around 180 rand per share. Since then, the share price has been declining. Yesterday, the share price closed at 45 rand per share, which is closer to that 40 rand per share that the share was supposed to trade in. Right, there is going to be a supply and demand every now and then in the market, and the price of a security is determined by the demand and supply, or supply and demand. So if you bought SAP Zenzele Kabili around 108 rand per share, now you are sitting at a share. We are holding shares that are now worth 45 rand per share. Remember, when you buy shares 880, let's say you pay 5,000 rand for these shares, so at 1.8, the value of your investment is about 5,000 rand. Once the share price dropped to 90 rand per share, now your investment, it goes down by half. You are no longer holding 5,000 rand worth of shares. You are now holding 2,500 rand worth of shares, even though the number of shares haven't changed, but the value of your shares, it has decreased. Once from 40 it goes back to 45, it means now your investment is down by about 75%. So that is something that you have to think about whenever you want to make an investment. Do think about the prospect of that business. With SAP Zenzele Kabili, it's understandable because people were thinking about the first scheme. There are people that made the claim that if they had invested 100 rand per share, they got 72,000 rand at the end of that PE share scheme. So a lot of people were drawn into SAP Zenzele Kabili. Plus, it was an opportunity for people that are classified as black according to the PE Act to participate in this kind of investment. At all times, whenever you want to invest in something, do think about it. What can happen? What is the fair price? Is there a margin of safety from the price that you are paying, so that whenever something happens, you don't find yourself in trouble. With regards to Datatec, let's assume that on the last day to trade, the share price is still going to be around 41 rand 40 there. Then what will happen, what we've seen with other companies, we saw that after the last day to trade, or on ex-dividend, the share price normally drops by the amount that of dividend that is going to be paid. So that means that we can just estimate that on the ex-dividend, the share price, it's possible that it can drop to 31 rand, but it is just a possibility. It's not something that is guaranteed that it's going to happen. Hopefully it won't happen, especially if you buy the shares at 41 rand. If the share price fall to 31 rand, you will be sitting at just over 20% loss there. So that is not something nice that you want to experience. Then when we look at other companies that have paid dividends, not necessarily special dividends, we see with Thungela, when they announced the dividend, the share price was still somewhere around 250 rand per share. Then the share price, it went up to about 377 rand per share. The people that bought Thungela either at 20 rand or just before that 250, they still don't have problems, because even if you bought at 250, the share price yesterday, it was somewhere around 300 rand per share. You are still sitting at a profit. But the people that bought Thungela around 308 rand per share, they are still sitting at a loss. Fine, the company might still recover, and then those people are going to break even. But if the share price continue to break down, then those people, their losses, it keeps on getting wider and wider, even though they will have received those dividends. So always make sure that you pay the right price for the stock. You do think about, whenever you're paying the price, think about, is it the fair price? And if you find yourself buying an overvalued company, is there a possibility that the company can do well in future, so that it covers those losses that you'll be sitting on? So that's it that I wanted to discuss with you. If you found value in this video, please consider subscribing. I will see you in the next video.